balls, back in the kitchen. It is still cold, the ground is back to frozen, so the store had mushrooms on sale for 99 cents, and these are button mushrooms. The last time I canned, I used Bella's, and portobellos, the baby portobellos, and this time I'm gonna use button mushrooms because that's what was on sale. So these are great to have sitting on your shelf, so if you'd like to have these sitting on your shelf, come back and I'll show you how to can these up. Super easy, great intro into water bath canning, and I'm going to put up about 6 or 7 jars. Okay, so I washed my mushrooms, and I hear so many people say don't wash your mushrooms. I'm not canning dirt or horse poop, so I've decided to wash my mushrooms, and everything I've read said it's okay to wash your mushrooms. So once you wash your mushrooms, you are going to trim the ends off, and I cut them in quarters because I think that these are too big. They're a little bigger than I would like to can, and so I'm going to do these in half-pint jars, so I would like to get as many in a half-pint jar as I can. So that's about the size. I quarter them, and you throw them in a pot, and to that pot you are going to acidulate your water. So you're going to put a half a cup of bottled lemon juice. Do not use, just made it. I don't want to go to the store. Don't use fresh lemon juice because this has an acidity factor to it. And then you just add cold tap water. And that just sets your mushrooms, it keeps them from turning brown and oxidizing. And so I'm going to get to cleaning and trimming up 3 pounds of mushrooms. And now we see why we wash our mushrooms. Look how filthy that water is. Wash your mushrooms. So I cleaned all my mushrooms, and I've got them boiling. They have to come to a boil, and this is in the lemon water. So this is the bottled lemon juice, a half a cup to a pot of water. So the one thing I'm noticing is when I did the Bella mushrooms did not absorb water. The button mushrooms are definitely absorbing more water. So that is the difference. So we'll see what the end product, if there's a difference. But as soon as these come to a boil, I am going to set the timer for 5 minutes. In the meantime, this is my water bath canner, and I have the water set on low. I don't want it to be boiling hard, but I want it to be hot when the jars go in. So I set this, and my jars are washed. They're in the dish strainer. They are not sterilized. You don't have to do that anymore. So I'm going to mix up the marinade, and I'll be back. Okay, I'm going to put the marinade together. My mushrooms are boiling, which is a good thing, and my canning water has a little bit of, it's got bubbles in it, so it's getting warm. It's actually getting hot, which is good. I have a small pot here, and to that pot I am going to add 1 1.5 cups of white vinegar and 1 cup of extra virgin olive oil. And the first time I made this, I didn't think this would be enough liquid to fill my jars, and it ended up I had extra left over. To that, I'm going to add a half a cup of onions, and I ran them through the food processor so they're minced. And then I have Italian seasoning. You can break it down and make up your own seasoning if you want. This is just a super efficient way for me to do it. And so to 3 pounds of mushrooms, I add 1 tablespoon of herbs. And these are dried herbs. I've never tried it with fresh. I don't know how that would be. And then I add 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. And this is a salt that I use for canning. And 1 box lasts me quite a while. Okay, I'm gonna bring this to a boil, and I'm just gonna get it hot, like boiling hot, boiling oil. So be careful. Then I'm gonna line my jars up here, and I've got to prep my jars and get them hot, because if you pour boiling oil and water into jars, and I have them on a wood surface so that they don't explode, and sometimes I put a cloth pad down because you just don't want that sudden change in temperature. I have some granite countertops here, and I mixed up these countertops when I built this kitchen, and I built the kitchen. I got the countertops off Craigslist, and yeah, I did it myself. So chicks with power tools rule. So, all right, I'm gonna prep my jars and I'll be back. Okay, my jars are prepped, and to each jar, I'm gonna put a clove of garlic, and this is the garlic out of my garden. And one thing I wanna show you, when you're peeling your garlic, if you notice that there's a stem coming up, pop it out, because that little stem will make your marinade bitter. So just put it somewhere else. It can go back in the compost pile. And these were big cloves of garlic, so I'm only doing a quarter clove per jar. And I know that this canner holds 7 jars, so I am only processing 7 jars. That's all I want to do. These jars are good and hot. To each jar, I'm going to add 1/8 to 1/4 teaspoon of crushed pepper flakes, and I like 1/8 of a teaspoon. I found out if in these small jars, because this is only holding 1 cup of mushrooms, and if it sits there for any length of time, but if you like spicy food, go for it. I'm good with 1/8 of a teaspoon. And then you start packing your jars with your hot mushrooms, which have been drained. And I have them sitting right there. And I have one of these handy dandy little funnels, and this was my mom's, but it's plastic. It'll last forever. It'll last till my children. So I'm gonna go ahead and start filling jars. Okay, I'm gonna debubble these because you don't want any air pockets in them. So this is a handy little tool, and you're just gonna slide it down in the jars and make sure all of the air bubbles have escaped. It also helps to get your mushrooms down below the line. And you're gonna need a 1/2 inch of headspace on this. That's probably the most important thing you're gonna take away from the video is you need a 1/2 inch of headspace. And what's great about this tool is it's marked off. So it's 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, it goes all the way up to 1 inch. And I did not have one of these tools for a long time, and I don't think I could can without it now because I've gotten so dependent on it. Okay, so I'm gonna measure these, and if I need to add liquid or take it away, now is when you do that. And so it says right there is a 1/2 inch. And it just rests on the side of your jar, and so you get a true reading. Okay, at this point, I have jars or jar lids on the back here that are heating up. You've got to get the rubber ring softened so that it will seat to your lid. Now, the next most important thing, now that you've pushed all the air out and you have no air bubbles, you have to wipe your lids, or your lids. That little, where the lid is going to seat to the jar. So you have to wipe that. If there's any little thing, a little herb or a little piece of mushroom or onion stuff there, your jars aren't going to seal. So I dip a paper towel into my boiling lid water because it's sterilized. And I wipe it off really well. and it's really hot. This also will identify if you have any nicks in your jars. This is usually when I pick it up, not when I'm washing them in the sink. Because if you have a nick in the top of your jar, it's not going to seal. So this is another great little tool. It has a magnet on the end, and it allows you to just pull your lids out. And that way you don't have to get your dirty fingers on your lid. You just set your lid down, pull it up, and then I've got some rings heating in hot water. Anyway, so you're gonna put your ring on and you're gonna, they always use the term finger tighten. You're just gonna turn it down. You don't want it too hard, and yet you don't want it loosey-goosey, because then all your liquid is gonna bubble out of your jar. Then, take your lid off, and I start lowering the jars into my canner. So I'm going to get the rest of these done and load the canner, and I'll be back. Okay, I'm going to lower these into the canning water, and my water has to be 1 inch over my jars, the tops of my jars. So I have this handy dandy, so this is 2 inches. I marked this with a wood burner. And I have 2.5 inches of water over my jars, so I'm more than set. So these are gonna process for 10 minutes, and then we'll pull them out. So I'm gonna clean up the kitchen while these are processing, and I'll see you in a few minutes. This has to come to a rolling boil before I can start to time it. So once it gets to a rolling boil, I will set my timer for 10 minutes, make sure that everything is bubbling away, and then at the end of 10 minutes, I'll be back. Okay, my timer's about to go off, so they've processed long enough. They've processed long enough. So all I am going to do, turn the flame off, take the lid off, reset the timer for 5 minutes, and walk away. Finish cleaning up. And the reason you do this is so that there isn't such an abrupt change to go from boiling water to room temperature, because at that point your liquid has a tendency to siphon out under the lids. So if you just let them rest for 5 minutes, it stops that siphoning process. And if you've ever seen tomatoes that are half full of water, it's because they went to too severe of a shock. So let them sit in the boiling water. The water's cooling down, and in 5 minutes I will take them out. Okay, 5 minutes. So now I can go ahead and pull them out of the water bath, and they're fine. And they're still boiling, so you'll see bubbles bubbling away. That's okay. And since there are no drafts in my kitchen, because it's winter, none of the windows are open, the dog's not tearing through the house, I'm just going to leave these like this and go do something else. Did you hear that? I love that sound. So I leave a little space between all of them, and it just helps them to cool more evenly. So I had some leftover marinade, and I just put it in a canning jar. I didn't seal it, and I leave this in the refrigerator for salad dressings or if I'm sauteing vegetables. And that leftover garlic that I had, because I only did 7 jars, I didn't do 10 jars, it's in here. And so if I want to run it through the food processor or chop it up and make salad dressing out of it, it's really good. So I wish you could smell my kitchen right now. So these are going to rest overnight. I'm not going to move them. I'm going to leave them right there. In the morning, I wash them with hot soapy water, take the lids off, and then I hold the tops with my two out of 7, hold the tops with my fingers and make sure I have a good seal. And if I have a good seal, I label them and I put them in the basement. And if I don't have a good seal, they go in the refrigerator or we eat them right away. And these don't last on the shelf very long. They're really good. It's the other thing I was going to say is I didn't make these for a long time because they had oil. Everything I had ever read on home canning said you absolutely cannot do home canning if it has oil in it. And this had a pretty good ratio of oil. So I finally did my homework. I got online, I did my research, and I will put the link below, healthycanning.com. This is their recipe, and they do extensive testing and research, so I feel real comfortable with these. I haven't had any trouble with these at all. The lids have all stayed sealed. I also they have another one with oil, another recipe with oil called bruschetta. I canned that up last year. That is delicious, and it's tomatoes with olive oil, and it's a spread for, I use it in salad dressings, or if you have like day-old bread, you can spread it on and put it under the broiler. It is delicious. So those 2 recipes are the only 2 recipes I use that have oil in them. And so far so good, and I trust Healthy Canning. So that's it. I will take some pictures when they're all done and the lids are off.